Talk of the Trollway spotlights Mount Horeb, Wisconsin's dynamic world of art, entertainment, hobbies, and travel. Funding for Talk of the Trollway is provided by Miller & Sons Supermarket.
Arnie Sweckel has been drawing monsters his entire life, inspired by vivid dreams and more than a few sights and sounds in his childhood home. After taking his talents around the world for such notable games as Dungeons & Dragons, Magic the Gathering, and Call of Cthulhu, he is now the principal artist at Raven Software in Middleton, Wisconsin, where he helps to create the billion-dollar worlds of today's immersive video game experiences. On this episode of Talk of the Trollway, we'll dig into his creative process, discuss reactions to his work, and see where he might be headed in the future, including perhaps adding a new resident to the village of Mount Horeb. I'm your host, Gary Schutz.
When I was a kid, I would draw monsters all the time, and everybody said, you know, you're a really good artist, but you never believe that when it's you,
Sure.
right? So well, I really got into it when I was 18, and I thought, I'll never make a career out of this. And my big thing growing up near Detroit was being part of the Big Three, being part of something like Great Lakes Steel or getting to make cars. That was the job to have. But then I read The Hobbit. When I read The Hobbit, I thought, oh, there's somebody out there who thinks like me. So here I've been drawing monsters all my life, and I thought, man, maybe I'll be a writer one day, or maybe I could be an artist. I never thought anything of it, just drew on all the time and had fun. I was a laborer, wallpaper and painter, did every laboring job under the sun, worked at a prototype shop. And when I was in the prototype shop, I made axes and swords, you know, that kind of thing, in my spare time. And my wife says to me, listen, you gotta send your work out there. But growing up in that environment, you almost have this fear of success, like, oh, I'll never be good enough. I sent my work in when I was 29 to a place called Chaosium. And they liked my stuff so much. 2 weeks after I sent my just sketches saying, you know, maybe I can find some work through here, they flooded me with work. And I thought, oh, holy crap, maybe I could do this. And all this time I'd been doubting myself. I could have got an 11-year late start. The stuff that they loved that I did was all the stuff I did when I was 18. I'm an older man now, so I don't care who believes me or not, but when I was a kid, I would see things. We had a friggin' haunted house, I gotta tell you. My mother says she would ignore it, but we kids saw it. And from there on, you know, you make a good point. Maybe that's why now I'm so into the horror part of it. Drawing monsters since I was a little boy. I always thought about the people, you know, as a little boy, thinking there's people in the walls, and I would draw them, and I'd draw the dinosaurs versus the space guys who came back in time, and I'd get into, you know, the mole people living under the ground. You know, that was a time too, back in the early 60s, where the late 50s just had all those monster movies. So you're looking at the mole people and the thing from outer space. They're all in black and white. That's how old I am. So I think that had a lot to do with the inspiration for it. You know, even the old Frankenstein's monster and Wolfman. But then back then we didn't have the internet, so when I was 10 I went to the library and then found these wonderful short stories. I was into Poe, of course, and then when I found Lovecraft stories, that was it, I was hooked. I think The Hobbit and Lovecraft have done the most to influence my art, by far. They made my imagination just soar. I mean, there's so many wonderful authors today, and some of that stuff, you go back and you read it, you know, you read the Silmarillion, it's kind of dry. But back then, I was just absorbing it, just like, this is the greatest stuff on earth. It was like food for my creative soul. And the creative process for me begins with just imagining what's not there. And I think that just harkens back to when I was a kid. That's why I like to get myself in that mindset of when I was bored as a kid. And it's good to be bored. That's where creativity comes from, for me. So later on in a professional setting, it's a lot different. But when you're a kid, when you're bored, your mind starts to wander. And so I got to get myself back into that mindset. And once I do, then I can sort of, well, I consider it a well, like a well of creativity, because that well can overflow, it can run dry, it can be burnt out. But, and I've gone through all those things over the years, several stages of that. Filling that well of creativity, I can, well, to dive into it. And once that well is full, man, it's amazing. It's like magic. One of the hurdles to being creative is that when I create something, I like it. This is what I think it should be. But I'm not just working for myself anymore once I come here. The creativity has this kind of like these outside forces that don't work against it but have to work in tandem. And there's things like your bosses, other people that are involved in the game. A lot of people have different ideas, or the game or project. So what I've found is I'll always create what I think it should be, and then I'll create ideas of what I think they're looking for. And many times we'll have a mishmash of those elements. Sometimes they go right with what I suggested. Sometimes they go with something that they thought I nailed it. I gave them what they wanted. And other times, even say I might do 10 drawings of a creature, and they'll say, this is nothing like what we're looking for. And so in a way, I'm still being helpful, because I'm mocking off by process of elimination what we're not going to have. You go to Lovecraft and he describes these amorphous blobs with eyes and things like that. That's wonderful for me. I feed off it. I can see those creatures, but they're how I see them. But if I'm going to draw something or illustrate something that you're going to find or somebody else is going to find scary, you have to identify with it. So you could do something as simple as taking a human being and giving it, say, the eyes of a cow. If you ever look at a cow's eye, it's absolutely frightening. It's a dark, scary thing. If you put that in a human face, you can identify with a human face. You look at those eyes where we look for some contact. And if those are slightly off, that becomes frightening. That can be just as scary as some demon picture. It's the subtlety of it. If you pick apart what scares people, it doesn't have to be this gigantic, huge, hulking creature destroying the city. It can be as simple as a kid looking at you the wrong way. That's fun to do. That's fun to sneak through there and find that little thing where people look at it and go, oh, and then they look at it and go, that's creepy. That's awesome. And to create that stuff is awesome. So if I can get that emotion out of you, yeah, I feel like I won. Here's the thing about doing a creature or say a monster for a video game or a book or anything. It has to be identifiable. If I needed to be scary, what would scare me? So I'll look at bugs. I love bugs actually, they don't scare me, but they scare a lot of people. So I use a lot of bug reference in my monsters. And so yeah, I'll look online and I'll look for things that inspire me, and I'll pull images out of say a dog jumping, looking at how his tendons are stretching. And then I'll pull some images of bugs, lizards, even go down into the sea and just sort of look at some of that skin, just to really, and sometimes I put it all together and sometimes I don't, but just having that really off-the-wall reference and putting it together into a creature form, having that to draw upon helps a lot. I think, yeah, now that I'm older and I'm 50 now, I think scaring people is my most fun thing. I think the horror aspect of it, if I can get you to look at something and go like this. When I was working on one of the video games I worked on, Wolfenstein, a lot of the stuff that didn't make it into the game was the more horrifying stuff. And I like that. Almost all my art is game related. I was sketching, exploring new styles, laying on the carpet, drawing next to my daughter and son. I was kind of doing a Da Vinci style, just sketching something out. And a wonderful woman by the name of Dawn Murin called me and said, Arnie, we're designing 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. Would you like to contribute anything? I go, oh my gosh, yeah. And they said, well, we're kind of designing the books. I go, hey, I'm doing this Da Vinci thing right now. And she said, oh, really? Can you send that to me? I go, sure. I got up and I'm on the phone with her. I'm scanning it in. And I go, what are you looking for? She goes, the Da Vinci thing's a good idea. Maybe we'll use it as the chapter headers. So it was this very on the spur of the moment thing, very go with the flow. And I scanned this image in, I'm talking to her, and I said, well, okay, you get it in a few minutes. She calls me right back and said, this is perfect. We'll put them on the beginning chapter headers of our rules books. And I'm like, great. And she goes, well, listen, right now, can you do like maybe 18, 20 more of those? I go, yeah, sure. And it wound up creating a look for rules books that was there for, I was a part of 22 rules books. And then after I couldn't do it anymore, they had other artists repeating what I did. That was one of my favorite projects. I am a gamer who's an artist. So I am a Dungeons and Dragons fiend. I love it. And I hope it never goes away. And I don't want it to go digital. I want it on the board, play with my kids and get into their imagination. Much like Lovecraft, you want to describe the monster, not necessarily show them this image. I mean, yeah, I want to show them some image of some things, but I want their imagination to grab a hold of them. The scariest thing is what you imagine, not what you're shown. And I love that my kids get to play it, or versions of it. And it's fun. I get to bring in all these scenarios and things that I think help teach them about the world. Whether they're dealing with a dwarf, an elf, a gnome, or their friends at school, it's still interaction. It's just putting a nicer, more fun wrapper on it. It's all about imagination and creativity, like we spoke about earlier. Those games like Dungeons and Dragons, video games, I love them because my creativity just explodes. And when I get immersed into a video game, it's this whole experience. It's way better than a movie. Once people saw my name attached to Dungeons and Dragons things, I would get emails, hate mail from Magic the Gathering saying that I did some Harry Potter work too. And I would get emails saying, don't you know that this is destroying our society? This is evil. You can't teach kids that they're casting spells. I can't see things from their perspective. I appreciate their perspective because it's their perspective. That's how they're going to see things, and I'm not going to be able to change their mind. But I make the distinction of this game that I'm playing as entertaining. I know I can't cast a spell. I know I'm not going to summon a demon with these cards in my hand. And some of those people seem like very intelligent people, and they believe what they believe. But I wouldn't do this if I thought that the art I was creating or the Dungeons and Dragons project I was a part of would actually create evil in the world. Gamers are gamers worldwide. They're wonderful kids. Some of them are ostracized because they're smart. Some of them are the football player. But the one cool thing about Magic the Gathering is it draws all these kids together and into a very positive experience. Yeah, it's a combat, it's Magic, but you're trying to outwit the other guy. You're not trying to, you know, it's nothing physical. And it's a lot of fun. It brings in all the smart kids. It brings in all the, and everywhere I go, Japan, China, several places in Europe, Italy, here, it's all the same kids coming through that door. They speak a different language. They look a little bit different, but it's all the same ones. It's all the ones who like fantasy, like adventure, like competition, like cards. And the wonderful thing about it is it accepts anybody. Everybody's welcome. Man, there should be more games like that out there. I was at a Gen Con, awesome Gen Con, gotta throw a nod towards Gen Con. And a guy came up to me and said, hey, I work at Raven Software and we're always looking for artists. Who are you? I met him and he said, give me your card. Lo and behold, I get a call about 4 months later saying we're working on some type of comic game or superhero game. I just never was much into superheroes. So I was like, I don't know if I really want to do a superhero game. And they said, we didn't come to agreement. But then about 4 months after that, they said, we're working on Quake. And I knew what Quake was. And I thought, Quake sounds fantastic. I'd love to work on Quake. If I can come out here and learn how they make video games, it's just sort of like expanding my horizons, getting a variety to my work, which I knew from advertising, that's what you want to do. You want a nice big span of styles. And if you're willing to teach me, I'm willing to come. And I've been here 11 years. And I got to tell you, as far as teaching goes, you learn something new every week here. It's always different. There's always new challenges, always new hurdles, and you learn something new every week, every month. It's something you had never expected. When I first got here, they said, come on in and you're going to design chairs and computer consoles and doors. And I said, that's it? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, I've been designing creatures for years, and I thought that's what I was getting hired for. And they said, no, all our creatures are already designed, all our weapons are already designed. And so for the next year or so, you're just going to be designing sort of the mundane things. And so I looked at their creatures and things that they had done at the time. Then I went home that weekend and drew up a monster. Once I drew that up and they saw it, they said, wow, we had no idea. And so starting at that point, once they grabbed it, they said, we don't have this monster in the game, but we'll go ahead and we'll put it in. And would you like to redesign all our creatures and redesign all our weapons? And I said, well, yes, I would, very much. All you artists out there, or writers, or anybody who's creative and wants to be a part of anything, to take it from me, don't get a thick skin. Don't do what I did. I waited around. The stuff I had done when I was 18, they loved when I was 29. If you want to do something, if you want to be a part of, if it's art, writing, whatever it is, just get it done. Do it. Send it out. You don't know what's wrong with it until you talk to somebody who does it for a living. So if you're a writer, if you're an artist, send your work out and say, is this good enough? Would you publish this, whether it's art or words? If not, where do you think I lack? What do you think I need to get it published? Take it back and do it over. Rewrite it. Sketch it again. Do it from a different angle. Send it back again. That dedication is going to get you what you want, no matter who you are. It really will. So I keep writing all these short stories at home, and I've never published as a writer. I've got outlines. I've got short stories. And again, it's funny. Here I am giving everybody advice, but I'm holding back. So so here I am thinking about these things. Let me polish them a little more. Let me polish them a little more, and then I'll send them out. Working for someone else, that can stunt your creativity. It can almost like depress it a little bit, and you know you only have so much to offer. So to alleviate that and to get that thrill back, I started drawing stuff for myself. And I created a file called No Stress Sketches. That's how I feed that my wild creative monster, I guess you could call it, imagining what should be there, and then just starting to form it through rough sketches, gestures, and then tightening on it, tightening on it, and tightening on it, and changing it up until it serves its purpose, whether it's supposed to be some beautiful maiden, some guy in space armor, or some terrifying creature. I try to create something that's going to pull those emotions out of me, and then if I'm lucky, it pulls it out of other people too, then it serves its purpose. Mount Horeb, we did a game a couple years ago called Wolfenstein, and I was the assistant art director. And so we take photo reference for the video game. So if you ever play Raven's version of Wolfenstein, you're looking at Mount Horeb, Wisconsin skies, Blue Mounds rocks, but trees from Mount Horeb, grass, leaves on the ground, rocks, the crumbled asphalt in the street. It's all throughout Wolfenstein. All those are from shots taken in Mount Horeb. We were driving around Wisconsin looking for a place to live, and we wanted something of a backyard. I drive into Mount Horeb, and I'm coming down the street, and I'm just like, oh, I'd love to live here. And we saw a house. I told my wife, man, I'd love to live in a house like that. She goes, that house is for sale. I go, it is not. We pull over, we look at it, we wound up buying that very house. I'm in love. I absolutely adore Mount Horeb. I grew up right next to Great Lake Steel. Everything there was covered in a film. We couldn't have a garden because they turn off the pollutant controls at night, and this stuff would come down and coat everything. I'd ride a bike at night, get home, and I could pull the ash off my skin. I come here, and I have about a 15-minute drive home, and I drive by these horse farms, dairy farms, and I see the soy and the corn. I'm such a lucky guy. There's a tree in my backyard just got hit by lightning last year. And I thought to myself, when that thing falls down, or it leaves a stump, I'm going to carve what I think is a troll. Because I don't see cute little short guy. I see trolls as being ogre-like and big and thick and bumpy and disgusting and big beards and mismatched teeth, overly large eyes and lots of hair, and walking off with a cow if they can. I think I'd really love to show everybody what I think that troll should look like.
Next time on Talk of the Trollway, our guest will be Mount Horeb's Paul Rux. While he may be a futurist, don't expect him to read tea leaves, gaze into a crystal ball, or search out the nearest constellation. He gathers information, ideas, and trends from numerous sources, brings all the pieces together into a single whole, and shines a guiding light on one possible path to the future. That's next time on Talk of the Trollway, and I'm your host, Gary Schutz.
Talk of the Trollway is a production of Mount Horeb Village Cable. Funding for Talk of the Trollway is provided by Miller & Sons Supermarket. Talk of the Trollway is on Facebook, where your comments and story ideas are welcome.